The Conspiracy to Own Everything. That's what this one is titled. Palantir and the Conspiracy to Own Everything. The largest heist in history. It's a big title. Like big, and there's like a lot of characters in there. But it's also a bold claim, because I haven't really come across it from this angle before. I know they want to kind of surveil everything. They want to be like, Palantir wants to be the eye, big brother watching everything, and so it can report back to whoever needs it. They want to protect democracies in the same way that Helsing did, if you remember that AI company that's raining down death across the plains of Eastern Europe. Palantir is the same. They're here to protect democracy. The only reason you have civil rights in the first place is because people like Palantir go out there and kill your fucking enemies because they're watching them. But like, we're talking about now them wanting to own everything. This will be interesting.
You apply for a job. Never hear back. Your resume uniquely filtered. Not by a person, but by a prediction algorithm fed by your uniquely private life.
At least we get to own all our shiny plastic junk, giving an illusion of a high standard of living. That's a really good point, actually. Like, there is a massive distinction between being a wealthy society that has ownership in assets. So like after World War II, you had the biggest redistribution of wealth ever in a modern sense. And like, you had the middle classes really owning stuff. They owned businesses, they owned property, they owned important consumer goods, like, things that add value. And then now we own, lumps of plastic and like little computers. We have little computers in our hands, which is great. Like, don't get me wrong. But like, it's not like owning your own home, is it? Something that you can sink some value into and use as a launch pad so you can, I don't know, start a family or something. But like, it's not like just owning a whole bunch of nice plastic things. That's not the accumulation of wealth. That's the accumulation of shit. The Eye of Sauron. And that's like Palantir, right? They wanted to call themselves Sauron, but like they couldn't. That was too on the nose, so they went with Palantir, which is a Lord of the Rings reference, as we know. If you're not acquainted with that one, Palantir are those little fucking orbs in a Lord of the Rings where you can look into, where you can see the future, but like the problem is it is misleading and it might talk to you in a different way. Talk about Lord of the Rings references. That's what Palantir is all about. They're admitting that they are watching and they are misleading. And it can be used by evil forces if necessary.
You search for chest pain symptoms at 2 a.m. The next day, an insurance company emails you about a specific plan tailored to you. You get pulled aside at an airport. No stated reason, you just matched a pattern. They're reading your shadow, the data you've shed, the gestures you've forgotten, and the correlations you didn't know existed. This isn't fiction. This reality is being constructed
Money greater than this isn't fiction. Interesting.
right now, and there's one group that's making this possible. They're called Palantir.
Like, all those scenarios that they went through just then, like, they're very fucking realistic. They are already using algorithms to filter through job applications. And this is not a Palantir thing. We read through in a podcast the AI Bill of Rights. And the AI Bill of Rights is a very misleading term, but like, it talks about how AI is being used and misappropriated because of, among many things, but one thing being biases in data. And so like, the biases in data is a big problem because you had basically an AI system that was being used by a company to screen people for interviews. So part of their recruitment process. And what was happening was most of the people in that organization were like, I don't know, middle-aged white males. So like, it was using data from that organization to help its choices. And so it was just like not picking women. That sort of stuff, what they're talking about, is real. Being picked up in the airport because you've been profiled by some company that conglomerates footage from surveillance cameras all around a particular city or state and then conglomerates that with police information. That's really happening. Palantir is crunching data across various platforms and then feeding that to the police. Police are spending big money getting AI to help send them out to patrol areas. But they can also go back to their computer after they pull you over and figure out what you've been up to thanks to AI. So like the example we had was that person that got pulled over, and then we're kind of like, what have you been doing today? And they, said, oh, I went to the beach. And they'll go back to their computer and check it. And they're like, well, you weren't at the beach. We saw you at the local library. You want to tell us why you're at the library when you said you were at the beach? This stuff is scary surveillance stuff. And Palantir is center to centralizing all of this information into scary, scary systems.
A group that has quietly operated behind the scenes for years. And what they built isn't a system of raw surveillance. It's authorship, the ability to write your life before you live it. And what's being authored is something that will mark the rest of the 21st century, something that will absolutely impact each and every person watching this video, no matter who you are and where you live.
It's great editing too.
So, who is Palantir? Palantir is a publicly traded corporation that specializes in big data integration on the software level. But what does that mean? In layman terminology, Palantir focuses on the orchestration, organization, and implementation of data. A ton of the information behind the scenes that products and services need, with a focus on automating the decision-making processes with that existing.
With a few clicks, Ukrainian Palantir engineer showed me how they could mine a dizzying array of battlefield data until recently would have taken hundreds of humans to analyze. We've watched it. Their LLM. It crunches battlefield data, sends out drones to figure stuff out, what's happening on the ground, and then gives out like commands, like potential options for the officers to take. And then they get to decide who lives and dies on both sides, enemy and friendly.
Data infrastructure. But how and where do they do this? They do this for corporate clientele such as JP Morgan, Wendy's, to public entities such as Britain's NHS, Norwegian Customs, Danish POL, Intel, Predictive Policing, all the way to ICE and the CIA in the United States. Product lines such as Palantir Gotham allow police departments to predict potential crime with data of citizens in a given community. They can even run probability for whether someone might have a mental health crisis. For militaries such as the IDF, Gotham can expand drone capability to be completely autonomous, controlled, operated, and executed by a machine learning algorithm. Palantir Foundry can automate logistics.
Foundry is the one we've talked about. Foundry quite a bit too, but like we've also talked about all of the things that they have there, almost like the NHS. They've got a hold of the UK health system. So the UK paid them like £500 million to come over with a program like Foundry and sort out all of their data. And so they can, provide services better. But like for Palantir, a surveillance capitalist, remember, data is the oil of the 21st century and AI is the software that is going to deliver us the future. How do you get better software, or how do you get better machine learning? You train it on more data. And data is the key here. And so the UK just handed over their entire public health system of data to a surveillance capitalist who needs data, not just because, it's great to have lots and lots of data, but it trains their systems and makes them better. And the UK paid Palantir £500 million to take data which improves their systems. To be honest, Palantir should have paid the UK government £500 million to get access to the data to help improve their systems. Palantir gets away with fucking murder, literally and figuratively, of course. Coles recently contracted them to, I believe, yes, I heard about that. Because, imagine the stock that they handle. Imagine the coordination that goes on being a national supply chain for supermarkets across the entire country of an expanse of Australia. Like, you have to have some good coordination and boundary. Their machine learning is integral for organizations, like state level organizations, to conglomerate their data and speak to it. They speak to Foundry, like, what have you found? Like, what can you see? Can you see trends? Can you see patterns? Is there a paradigm shift that we can implement here based on the conglomeration of data that you have? And so, like, they're servicing fucking everyone. The last one they listed here, did you hear it? Oh, and the CIA. Hello? The CIA made Palantir. The CIA made Palantir possible. Palantir was not profitable. Alex Karp said it multiple times. They were not profitable for the first 3 years of their existence at least. They had to build this technology up and make it something that was worth using. And it was the CIA that was their main and only customer for that time period. And they helped invest in it, in Palantir, through their own venture capital firm, InQtel. That not only does the CIA go around the world strong-arming political opponents and people that might threaten the US empire, but they also invest in companies that provide technology because they've got an investment arm. They use taxpayer money to invest in the private sector so they can develop technology that's going to suit them. And all that Palantir did for the first 5 years of its existence was service the deep state. They serviced the CIA. They didn't go out to market. They didn't have to. Remember that. Just remember the whole free market delivers the best. There's absolute bullshit. It's the state that delivered all of this technology. And now the forces combining, that corporate force combining with the state, is now delivering us the very technology that is like the Eye of Sauron, Big Brother from 1984. They've got a word for when the corporate system and the state merge. It's called corporatism, and it was a word developed by a little man named Mussolini, who was also the father of fascism. That was his vision, the merging of the corporate sector and the state. This is, for all arguments, on a material sense, maybe not politically or culturally, ideologically, but this is fascism, what we're talking about. Fascism in action, as Mussolini would have called it, I guess.
And make predictive outcomes in healthcare and supply chains, such as Britain's NHS. As we speak, Palantir is experiencing an unprecedented rise in market cap, growing by 23 times since 2023. They were founded by Peter Thiel, a billionaire venture capitalist and mega donor of the Republican Party, who broke campaign finance records by donating a whopping $15 million to J.D. Vance's 2022 Senate campaign. Thiel is also...
And remember, what's the exit they've got there? Vance's political rise, donating $15 million to his 2020 Ohio state campaign and helping him win a closely fought GOP primary. Now, this is in 2022. The Supreme Court decided the case of Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission on the 21st of January 2010. It was a landmark, controversial 5-4 decision that significantly changed campaign finance regulations in the United States. Interesting. I wonder, this is all speculation here, that since 2010, what's happened is because of this Citizens United cases, they've been able to, as in the rich and the powerful, are able to donate significantly, incredible amounts of money to political campaigns, let's say. Maybe not directly to politicians, but they can indirectly use things like PACs and super PACs to donate to political figures. And here you go. You have Peter Thiel, the kingmaker, at this point in history, in 2022, donating a record $15 million to make J.D. Vance, who came out of fucking nowhere, who is now Vice President of the United States of America. And I think Citizens United, you want to talk about a class system? Let's bring it back to that. Citizens United is one of the most important decisions in the reinforcement of a class society. One of the most important things in American history, because again, the rich and the powerful have now no real limitations on how they influence the bourgeois political system. And that is not even limited to American citizens either. Look at the super PAC that the Israeli state has through, I think it's called Apex. Elon squashed that record. And isn't it interesting that it's another tech bro who smashed the record? Bang, tech bro number one, Peter Thiel, who started off in PayPal, co-founded with Elon Musk. And then Elon Musk, yes, definitely smashed that one to pieces.
$1 million to J.D. Vance's 2022 Senate campaign. Thiel is also famous for pushing for fully private-owned cities, city-states, entirely owned by corporate.
Hey, the network state rears its head again. Its big, fat, ugly head. Hey?
Corporations.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
Should
this.
the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But
How many times do you reckon that prick has been cut now because of saying that? Seriously. It's super shocking stuff. It is shocking stuff. All of it.
The second major player is the eccentric CEO Alex Karp, an odd technology CEO who has remained in the shadows until recently.
To disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
A question emerges here. Amidst a very unstable technology market in the US, an economy generally bearish at the prospect of new technology investment, how has Palantir quietly grown by a seismic 23 times? Palantir didn't grow overnight, but the acceleration they are experiencing seemingly did. An acceleration fueled by robbery in plain sight. A heist that dwarfs anything in history. Yet, it's important to note the past 40 years of neoliberalism can be described as a heist in general, an unprecedented seismic extraction of wealth from normal, day-to-day working-class people, to the point where the rich have never accumulated more wealth compared to the rest of society in human history.
Oh, there's my boy, Buff Bezos. And there's cheekbones over there, eh? And who's that? Is that Rockefeller? Rockefeller's not looking so buff in that picture, is he?
But we all know this. Many aren't surprised that the top 10% own 93% of the entire US stock market, that the top 1% own over 30% of all wealth in the US. Journalists, economists, and even the rare politician have warned us for decades that this level of extraction is occurring. But without outright crippling society to the point of economic collapse, what else is there to take? Turns out, a lot more. And it's far more powerful and substantial than money could buy.
What is it? What is it? Anyone? Come on, think about it. Anyone putting bets on? Your information, your sovereignty, your data, your rights? And what is it going to be? Put it in the chat. Let's see if you're right.
Now to President Trump and Elon Musk's latest moves to reshape the federal government. The top Social Security official stepped down after Musk's team requested access to sensitive personal data about millions of Americans. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is tracking it from Mar-a-Lago.
After the 2025 presidential election, the Trump administration announced the creation of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, with the official aim to cut, quote, fraud, waste, and abuse in the public sector. Headed by Elon Musk, and with ex-employees of Palantir, Musk made an official goal of cutting $2 trillion in what he claimed was identifiable waste. In actuality, the final sum expected to be cut is $160 billion, with official estimates showing that DOGE's total operational cost to be around $130 billion itself. And according to a report from Yale's The Budget Lab, the measures to cut various government agencies is expected to create a net loss of $300 to $500 billion over the next decade. And despite this has been the Trump administration's greatest success. That's because DOGE is a lie. The point was never to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. It's a facade for an ambition much greater and far more consequential.
Come on, The suspense.
In February of 2025, members of Doge gained root access to a plethora of government IT systems, such as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the U.S. Agency for International Development. But the real crucial one is the Social Security Administration, harboring one of the most sensitive databases in the United States. The birth dates, historical addresses, employment history, financial records of every single American. It doesn't take a genius to understand what is going on here, but what sells the terrifying endgame is the transparent, illegal nature of this. Federal courts have blocked Doge from entering these databases after it was already done. But that's the point. The repercussions do not matter. Even if courts find Doge and the Trump administration in judicial contempt for illegally accessing federal databases, the data has already been siphoned.
That's what I was saying, like with the NHS thing, like that was daylight robbery. And the UK government paid Palantir 500 million to take it off them. They want the data. They want access to all the information. Not only does it make their systems better, as I was explaining, but it comes with incredible power. All of that information. And like, I think it's a good point what they're raising here, because that's one of the big things that they were arguing about in the background behind the drama of Doge. They were really talking about what type of stuff should they be allowed to go after as a Department of Government Efficiency. Really, what should they be getting access to? And they were cutting in hardcore into various departments. And Trump has been doing lots of other stuff too. It's not just through Doge. I know that they're focusing kind of on a Palantir scary techno-feudal overlord kind of vibe with this one. But Trump's been signing executive orders. He's been changing legislation or ramming legislation through the House that helps things. But like one of his big promises to his wealthy donors, I'm sure, but one of his big executive orders was about making sure that there is government coordination in terms of data collection. And so Palantir has been hired multiple times now using a system like Foundry to help government organizations consolidate their data so it can be put into a pool, and all the government agencies out there, all the various departments from Health and Human Services to the Department of Justice to the Department of Education, like everything can have their data consolidated into one set, and then there'll be some overarching body that they haven't decided about yet that is going to then coordinate all government information. This is not just about Social Security and getting information, like personal information on every American. It's going to be coordinating all of that information with all of the other information from every single government department out there to have a very extensive profile on all people out there, or that anyone who's been associated with the US government somehow, including all of those illegals, those undocumented types, aliens that are there legally, all that sort of stuff. Everyone who's got some type of governmental record will go into a system somewhere. And the scary part about it, and I'm assuming they're going to get to it because it's got to do with Palantir, is that not a lot of companies can handle this at scale. And the other advantage is for Palantir is that if you're using Foundry in one government organization, the end goal is to coordinate this government department over here with this government department over here, and they're both using Foundry. That works better because Foundry can talk to Foundry and they can consolidate that better. So it makes more sense to have Palantir just do the whole thing. And if Palantir has access to all of that information, including, potentially what Musk got access to through the Social Security information, then that is a big deal for Palantir to be this one-stop shop for all government data centralization. This is like the holy grail of government here, to actually be able to centralize your data and have a one-stop shop for everything. But the thing is, and no one's really got an answer to this question, because people are asking the question, but no one's got an answer to it. What government department actually has oversight on all of this? Because there is actually no legislation around this. Who's actually supposed to have access to all of this consolidated information? The president? Should the president have a button in the White House, the red button kind of thing, and just press like, I need information on JAG, like kind of thing, and like all of the information consolidated from all government departments federally gets like fed into a system, and the president gets to look at that. There are, there are things in the American Constitution that's supposed to stop government overreach of that nature, and so like, should they have access to that? I don't know. Like, apparently that's an overreach from, an American liberal sense. That's not how they structured their society and wrote their constitution. It wasn't allowing government surveillance. Government's supposed to stay out of that sort of stuff. And they're consolidating this harder and harder while all the other drama goes on. And like, that's the mantra of them as well. You got nothing to hide. Don't worry about it. If you're an upstanding, law-abiding citizen, don't worry about it. But like, that's not how America's society, I think, has structured itself. It's actually structured itself in a way to protect the citizen from the overreach of the state. And this is like overreach like no other, baby. Like, really, it really is. This is pushing the boundaries of what is absolutely acceptable in terms of state oversight and the privacy of the individual citizen. And like, this is what they're consolidating at the moment. And when they're talking about like Doge going in there, doing some crazy stuff, siphoning information, allegedly, I didn't see this with my own eyes, but allegedly in the White House, there was a building outside, out the back of the White House, that Muskie boy set up. It was maybe the building was already there. Maybe it was a shed, and he took over it, and he had his own internet access there. So he's not running through the White House. He had his Starlink set up in this shed where Doge was operating out of. And like, from a cybersecurity perspective, the intelligence services, the security agencies were worried about that. They were like, why is Musk, who's been questionably given access to government anyway through Doge, why has he got his own setup outside, just outside of the White House, where he has his own connections in and out of the White House? What's going on there? And like, no one was really pulling him up on that while he was doing his whole Doge operation. Now, if you listen to the speculation coming out of this video, they were siphoning information out of the social security systems, out of USAID. They were siphoning reams and reams of data out of those organizations. Elon Musk had some setup where he had his own connections. And what do you think he was doing all day then? If he was siphoning data out of these treasure troves, and he had his own secure line out of that place, it really, really does add to this speculation here.
In April of 2025, Judge Ellen Hollander denied Doge access due to concerns around privacy and the Fourth Amendment, along with the Fair Privacy Act, a 1974 law that requires explicit protection of personal data unless there is immediate urgency.
Thank you. Because I was saying conspiracy the other day, but I think you corrected me. You're like, it's a hypothesis and these are facts. Let it be known.
Urgency and law enforcement function of Privacy Act, a 1974 law that requires explicit protection of personal data unless there is immediate urgency and law enforcement functions. Which, as the courts reflected, there clearly is zero urgency to combat crime that would necessitate unfettered access to the Social Security Administration's database. Yet, in June of 2025, in an absolutely contradictory and wild ruling, the Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration had authority to executively access federal databases at will. The only 3 liberal judges dissented. The behavior here is what is particularly dangerous, to execute without legal process, without genuine consultation of the law. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson voiced concern regarding the Trump administration's legal defense. In essence, the urgency underlying the government's stay application is the mere fact that it cannot be bothered to wait for the litigation process to play out before proceeding as it wishes. A concerning question here remains: is this naive hubris of the Trump administration a lack of concern due to Trump's evasion of legal repercussions, or is this done with a strategic plan of assurance that the law will not be applied to them after the fact? that the few democratic judicial procedures in the US will be null and void by the time justice could ever be served. We don't know the answer. What we do know is that all
We do. We know the answer. It's called techno-feudalism, a bit of neo-reactionary culture in there. Look it up. It'll surprise you. This is right out of the playbook. Talk to someone like Curtis Yarvin. He'll let you know. It's called a butterfly revolution. Smash the place. Steve Bannon calls it flooding the zone, not just with bullshit policy and legislation and changes and executive orders, but it's stuff like this. Attack everything single institution out there. Attack them all. And they don't know which one to fight back on. That's how you get stuff done. But you got to move fast. And they were moving real fast. It's only been 6 months. And they smashed pretty hard. Curtis Yarvin was pissed off that they didn't go harder. Can I just add?
all our collective, sensitive data is now out in the wild, unbeknownst to us, but not without emerging clues. In May of 2025, a New York Times article highlighted the Trump administration's plan to create a centralized database on every single American citizen. Palantir is set to lead the charge. Little is known how this database will be constructed, what technical data will exactly be used. But we do know Palantir representatives have been in contact with two big American agencies, the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service, who head the two most important government databases in the country. It's important to note how information systems work. One might argue that our data is already in a specific state database, that the entirety of our information is already available to the state at large. This framing is incorrect. It presupposes that the state is a single entity, able to executively access specific data at will. Information systems are much more fragmented, and that's on purpose. The Social Security Administration will not have access to the same data as the Department of Health and Human Services. It's the centralization that changes everything, and the horror of this conundrum is twofold. The state now has unfettered access, a single executive database to pull from. And now, it's not just the state. A third party and private entity, Palantir, owns the keys.
We've researched this. This is a little bit dramatic. Like, there are other organizations out there that help with this type of large-scale data analysis, but it would appear that Peter Thiel bankrolled President Trump to a large extent, especially in 2016 when everybody abandoned him. Peter Thiel didn't. He's stuck in there. He can smell an opportunity fucking miles away. That man, he is very sophisticated from a strategic standpoint, but he has favors to call upon Trump. And so, like, if you're going to be using someone's data analytical services to consolidate major government departments, ones that they are rightly saying here are all separated right now. They're all separated, but it's not this like, let's combat state overreach kind of conundrum that they're kind of making it out to be. Like, these government agencies are all separated and they don't talk to each other because, you know, that's just part of how our democratic society protects itself from government overreach. No, it's more that government is a big beast and it takes someone with a big remit and some great political maneuvering and management to try and bring these government departments together to speak to each other. But like, Trump owes Thiel favors. Thiel owns Palantir. If you're going to get somebody to do all this sort of stuff, you're going to probably give those contracts out to Palantir, let's be honest. It is no coincidence that all of this is happening right now. It is no coincidence. This is long-range stuff here. Palantir is ready. It's ready to go. And it's landing these contracts already. And like I said before, if they have a few of them, they might as well have all of them, because it's actually easier to integrate once their system is operating on this department over here and that department over there. And then eventually you're going to have one centralized department that overlooks all government data. You might as well have that run by Palantir too, so the systems talk to each other. You just have one system and it's all based on the same software. They're right here. It's the government that's centralizing all of this, and you should be worried about government oversight and all that sort of stuff, but they're not developing their own software, the government. They're contracting it out to a third party. Like we said at the start, the merging together of the corporate system and the state to that extent, that corporatism, was the word that the originator of fascism himself coined as the essence of fascism.
I have given it to some, but it goes to very special people, and I thought I'd give it to Elon as a presentation from our country. Thank you, Elon.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Very symbolic.
All of this was under the political banner of efficiency. Trump's administration wanted to stop fraud, waste, and abuse by eliminating information silos through the process of, quote, removing unnecessary barriers to federal employees accessing government data and promoting interagency data sharing are important steps towards eliminating bureaucratic duplication and inefficiency while enhancing the government's ability to detect overpayments and fraud. The efficiency was made possible by tearing down the legal, privacy, and data protections in place to protect American citizens from third parties. And the Trump administration handed the keys of our most sensitive data to one of the most sophisticated data organizations in the world. But you may ask, for those of us around the world, for those of us who don't care about data integrity, what does this mean for us? Well, it means everything, because everything is at stake. Information is a currency far greater than the dollar or any tangible asset. It allows for the prediction of that very everything. And Alex Karp understands this.
With them being the winner of the world, because if they're winning, it means other people are losing. What do you think of that?
I don't think in win-lose. I think in domination.
Do you know who Palantir is?
I do.
Do you think that Palantir has ever scraped data from Facebook?
Senator, I'm not aware of that.
Here's a fun fact for you. One of the first investors in Facebook, an angel investor they call it, you guessed it, Peter Thiel.
We've entered what theorist Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, an economic system that doesn't extract value from your labor, but from your behavior itself. Every search, pause, purchase becomes raw material for algorithms that predict and modify what you will do next. And
I was waiting for it. It can happen once every stream. Shoshana, baby, please. It's Shoshana, man. She's across this shit. She knows. If Shoshana knows and she's talking about it, we all better pay fucking attention.
it's a surplus you give out freely, while scrolling social media, visiting web pages, much of your digital life. This might seem overly theoretical and dramatic in nature, but this model of extraction is right here. Bruce Schneier, a cryptographer, computer scientist, and author, coined it perfectly. Surveillance is the business model of the internet. We build systems that spy on people in exchange for services. Corporations call it marketing. When immigration data gets processed, Palantir and the state is not just tracking individuals, they're modeling migration patterns to engineer policy responses. When health records get analyzed, they're not predicting individual outcomes. They're optimizing population health according to invisible, computerized priorities. You aren't just being watched, you're being predicted, and prediction becomes policy before you know the game has started. Another reason why data is so incredibly powerful in the hands of organizations with vast computational power is the sheer speed and velocity it's able to capture behavior, to predict, to fundamentally own. Paul Virilio, a theorist and military historian, is also particularly relevant here. In the 1970s, Virilio coined the term dromology, relating to the Greek word dromos, which roughly means race. Dromology can be seen as a way to understand the contemporary relationship with society and speed. Virilio sees speed as a fundamental mechanism of power and a driving force in technological growth. In the context of modern warfare, pure strategy no longer wins. Superior logistics do. From the Wehrmacht's strategy of blitzkrieg to the United States' ability to reach A to B in the supply chain. In the case of domestic society, telegraph to the telephone to...
Logistics is really important. Like, it's one of the things that made Napoleon so effective. He was able to march on the entirety of Europe because he had really effective communications and logistics services, actually. And he marched with incredible speed. He wiped out most of these toy soldier armies of the great European powers because he doubled his marching speed, but he kept his communication lines strong. And he would often cut off his enemies' communication lines and logistics and just completely make them impotent. That's a good point, actually. I wonder where they're going with this.
Advanced computation and digital communications. Yet, to Virilio, there's side effects. Speed confuses. It creates what Virilio calls the tyranny of real time, a type of sociology that minimizes the geographic, physical existence of life by way of rapid communications, digitalization, and processing power, which then can lead to instability, upheavals, and even the erosion of democracy by way of a cult of technocratic efficiency. Just through the speed of modern work and technological innovation, our ethics, the sublime humanity we hold, tends to get tossed to the wayside. Virilio was concerned about an emerging ideology of technological determinism and supremacy. The belief that technology's evolution, its ability to innovate, was enough to legitimize itself. That any result from technological growth is inherent, perhaps not proper, nor desirable, but inevitable, and we have no say. Does that sound familiar right now?
I think AI will probably, most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
Palantir embodies this. It may...
The more I hear about Sam Altman, the more I want to punch him in the face. Honestly, he is one weaselly motherfucker. Yeah, in the meantime, I know, what the hell does that mean? Come on, what a douchebag. What they're talking about here is determinism. It's a very deterministic outlook on how society works and how technology works and the interaction between the human and the machine, which is what people accuse Marxists of all the time. Can I just say that Marx's understanding of capitalism and its inevitable destruction and descent into chaos, which is what they're describing here. This is the descent into chaos, where the liberalism that supported capitalism at the start falls by the wayside and basically descends into barbarism. And what is that? But a form of fascistic authoritarian rule. Well, here we are. But do you trust this analysis? This is what technology does as it rapidly changes and evolves over time. And the determination is that, it causes problems because of the speed in which it moves. It causes social instability. If that is literally the call here, that is a very Marxian critique of capitalism view there.
Seem that Palantir's extreme centralization of information is reckless. Arrogant executives foaming at the mouth at new quarterly increases and a bump in stock price. But this underscores the very intentional, real power grab that is happening, and the goal is not merely financial in nature. Palantir's ability to harness the power of speed, its velocity of growth, and information capabilities is what makes this a horrifying prospect. The effect of this is the evisceration of democratic procedure, expectations of privacy. This creates an effect similar to what Foucault deemed as panopticism, the effect of surveillance, normalizing of an authority that watches to the extent you regulate yourself. It's not just the mass collection of data of many across the globe, but the quiet acceptance, creeping normalization, the feeling of inevitability, that our entire DNA can be sequenced remotely, our behaviors, mental patterns, synthesized and predicted. Private health insurers and/or state healthcare systems may have access to nearly all of your data and have the power to make predictions on health outcomes. They may deny your care based upon specific behaviors, your whereabouts, and weekend activities. Marketers can target individuals with accuracy we've never seen, based upon biological makeup, your spending habits. With your data becoming centralized in a master database, combined with the rise of self-trained AI and neural networks, political corruption, and administrations that willingly sacrifice public commons in favor of capital, the disturbing possibilities are endless.
This is a very Marxist critique of capital. What they're talking about here is speed up. Marx goes into great detail in his volumes on capital, Das Kapital, and in the Grundrisse, if you've ever come across that text before. And there's this phenomenon in capital that relates to speed up. What they're talking about is like the technological process moving faster than like the human capacity to contemplate and be able to rationalize that rapidity of change. It's beyond our human kind of conception. As temporal beings, we're trapped in, reality, let's call it. And technology, as capitalism revolutionizes the means of production, its defining feature, technology is compounding in its rate of change. And beyond that compounding rate of change, technology will move even and potentially exponentially, where you have technology that can actually adapt and do its own thing. And that's what AI touts. Its proponents tell us that because it is machine learning, it is self-iterating as well. And so if it's going to start making developments and changes to its own makeup, the technology doesn't even need human input anymore to develop. And so they're talking about the tyranny of time. We got no idea in the face of AI, which can basically reiterate itself. We are standing on the precipice of a change in human history in a capitalistic setting due to the change of the means of production themselves that we're not ready for, honestly. And they do refer to these points in history as the singularity, like once they developed the steam engine, or once they developed electricity, or once they developed the combustion engine properly. No one knew where the technology was going. No one really knew. They could predict kind of, everyone might have a light bulb in their house kind of thing. But it goes well beyond everyone just being able to turn on the lights. Electricity has done way more than that. And so AI, if it moves that fast, it's going to be the theory is it's going to be very destabilizing. That's what they're talking about here. And yes, but and it's nice that they bring in other philosophers here, but Marx was talking about this 150 years ago, and he was deadly accurate with it too. And yes, it will lead to further destabilization, but capitalism will sacrifice its political stability in order to save its economic position. So what I'm saying is, yes, democracy will be the first thing that goes down in the face of ensuring and maintaining value creation chains which lead to profits. But that's the one thing about the AI and why I think it's going to take over. It's very interesting that we've stopped right on the picture of Wall Street, but for a long time capitalism has been defined by finance capital. Finance capital has been the way. The stock market's doing well, then the bourgeoisie are doing well. Financial capital has reigned supreme. But this is why we have been theorizing on this for months now, apparently 6 months. Actually, we're coming up to 6 months on this. But the bourgeoisie, or the most important elements of the bourgeoisie, potentially the techno-feudal lords now, and they're not financial capitalists. They're tied to Wall Street, but they're not Wall Street. They're not corporatists as such. They're techno-feudal overlords. And these people have a claim now on capitalism through this new means of production. So the value is not coming from the financial sector anymore, which was pure speculation anyway. It wasn't even real value creation. But these guys, your Sam Altmans, your Elon Musks, your Mark Zuckerbergs, they are holding the means of production for the future. And if they're developing it at such a rapid pace that we can't even keep up with it, it's going to be dramatically destabilizing. Dramatically destabilizing.
But not all is lost. We create new data every day, and much of it is under our control. While not all, we have ownership and agency around how and when much of that data is shed. On the front of a state-sponsored centralized database, explicit political pressure is about all we can do. This is a unique dilemma not even security researchers would have predicted. This is relatively new territory. It must be conveyed as a crisis alongside and equal to issues such as climate change, money, and politics, which it absolutely is. There's also a lot we can do individually to combat the peripheral data collected by private, large-scale tech platforms, such as social media, online shopping, and general computer use. While this goes beyond the full scope of the video, we can limit our footprint, avoiding the gold mine we create for corporations that are contrary to normal people's existence, using open source software, refusing to use tech platforms that make you the center product, or, if you must, poison their data sets. Never use real names, give false addresses, make their data completely inoperable.
This is an anarchist's response to this. It's a pretty good response. I hope you're listening. This is direct action. You want to fight the system and you want to do it as an individual. Sometimes you can't get together with other people and make, impactful change that everybody else can talk about, but you can do stuff as an individual. Listen to this. This is called direct action.
Real names, give false addresses, make their data completely inoperable. As individuals, we can still control what data private entities collect from us. In theory, we can destroy the very fabric that makes corporations such as Google profitable. What is more difficult is a state-ran centralized database, though. Digital hygiene and individual habits don't equally apply here. There will need to be collective pressure, and we will have to work together. But it's up to us, whether or not we will approach these challenges with a cynical nihilism, a laziness that accepts defeat before the race has finished, or we can move forward with the courage and understanding that we still fundamentally control the keys. Thank you all for watching and making it to the end.
Now, there was an article that popped up right at the end there. It was a picture of JD Vance. Did you see what the headline said? It was something like, JD Vance wants Citizens United 2.0. What the is that about? Based on the provided context, the term Citizens United 2.0 refers to a legal effort spearheaded by Senator J.D. Vance and other Republicans aimed at having the Supreme Court remove some of the country's last remaining campaign finance regulations. Holy shit. Really? Is it possible for American democracy to be further degraded by the influence of billionaires? Thanks to a champion of the working class, J.D. Vance, and his right-wing friends, including dark money kingpin Leonard Leo, we may soon find out. The Citizens United Supreme Court decision in 2010 is rightly remembered as a devastating blow to American democracy. Outside spending in federal elections has skyrocketed from $700 million at the time of the ruling to $4.5 billion. That's $4.5 billion in 2024. Isn't that mental? Isn't that absolutely insane how much money that they can put into the political system? Like, you can't compete with that. Like, this is bourgeois politics. So next time someone talks to you about like how they have an insider, that's going to change the game by, getting in with one of the main parties, They're going to change the way the world works from inside that party. Like, it is very, very questionable whether that is even a possibility anymore. Like, maybe before this decision, maybe. Like, because you could really start a grassroots movement. But, like, I don't know if you can really face up to the power of that money anymore. The court has agreed to hear a case in the fall that could result in undermining already weakened campaign finance law. National Republican Senatorial Committee et al. Versus the Federal Election Commission et al. Are seeking to emulate the Citizens United strategy, positing moneyed influence in politics is a First Amendment freedom. Federal restrictions limiting coordination between national party committees and candidates would be abolished. That's the bourgeois political system in action right there. Money is expression. The republic has got nothing to do with democracy that is supposed to be representative of the interests of the people. Democracy is about representing the interests of people involved in the economy. And that is a bourgeois democratic system.
Remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.